What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 16 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop here with your defensive preview this time around. Of course, if you missed it, go back, check out the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver previews I put out earlier today. And get ready to lock in your lineups for the final week of the 2021 regular season. It is this week, and it kicks off early Tuesday night with the game between Edmonton and Toronto. 5 games on the schedule this week. The Elks play twice, which means their points should count from both games. Makes for an interesting week of CFL Fantasy. But let's take a look at the defensive options. And I think this is a very clear-cut week at defense this week, with the overall go-to option being the Montreal Alouettes defense. Is the one I think you should lock in your lineup. But let's take a look at all of the options. Starting top-down price-wise, the Rough Riders have jumped out to being the most expensive defense by a whopping $1 more expensive than the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The Riders, $5,143 is the price. You need 12.9 points out of that defense to get your 2.5 points per $1,000. They're averaging 8.5 on the season. Last couple of games, the reason I say stay away from them is the last 3 games they've had 8, 4, and 7. They hit 11 in week 12 and then 9 in week 10 and 5 in week number 9. So they haven't hit that full value once at all in the past number of weeks. They got close in week 12. But they're playing a Hamilton team that's been one of the best offensively. Jeremiah Masoli's got the highest fantasy point average among quarterbacks. And Hamilton's got a lot to play for in this game. Saskatchewan's got second place locked up. So I don't like the Riders' defense in this matchup. The Bombers' defense, next most expensive. I think they're a yellow light option this week. It depends on what the lineup looks like for the team. If they have all of their starters in place because they want to gear up for a playoff game here, I do like Winnipeg's defense in this game. I think there is, they are going to bounce back. Last week they did only put up 4 points, but this defense, we've seen what they can do all year. I mean, they're averaging 12.5 points a game, and you need 12.9 out of them. They do face a Calgary team that has been one of the better ones against defenses, hasn't given up a ton of fantasy points in that category, but I expect this to be 2 teams getting ready for a potential playoff matchup in the West Final, depending what Calgary and Saskatchewan do in the semifinal. And I think this is going to be a game where both teams come to play. And if so, I do like the Bombers. I do like the Bombers' defense, but of course, check those depth charts and see if they're missing a ton of pieces, or if Sean McGuire's playing the whole game at quarterback instead of Collaros. Well, then maybe I don't like the defense quite as much if they're going to be out on the field seemingly more often. Montreal's defense, as I mentioned, is the absolute go-to option this week. They are the second best defense fantasy-wise in the league behind Winnipeg, averaging 9.5 points a game. You need 11.1 out of them this week, and they have the best matchup given that they're facing Ottawa. Montreal, in their past couple of games, has looked pretty good. In their past 5 games, they've put up 23, 27, 8, and 11. So they had a couple games dipping a few points shy of value there, but they've come really close, including last week against the Bombers. So they face Ottawa, who's given up a lot of fantasy points to defenses all season. Duck Hodges' last game against Toronto for Ottawa didn't look good. I think there's potential here for Montreal, and they have put up big games against Ottawa earlier this year. Back in week 11, they put up 23 points, 10 sacks in that game. They also are one of the few teams still jockeying for playoff position. They're trying to lock up the home playoff game to get second in the East. So big game for Montreal, I think, is going to pay off big time if you take their defense. I don't like the option of the Argos this week at 37.55. They were the highest scoring defense of the week last week, to their credit. They put up 16 points against Hamilton. But Toronto seems to be hit and miss defensively. You're either getting, back in week 10, they put up 29 on Ottawa. This week they put up 16. And in between, their highest total in the 4 games in the middle there was 4 points. So they're hit and miss game in, game game in and game out. And they do face, they're facing an Edmonton team that Cornelius seems to have kind of gotten things back on track a little bit the last couple of weeks. The Argos also could be resting guys, with this being them having first place locked up already. So don't love the Argos option this week. I think Calgary's a potential play here if the Bombers are going to be starting Sean McGuire at quarterback and resting a bunch of players along the offensive line as well, like they did against Montreal last week. Calgary's got a pretty decent defense as of late. Their past 4 games, they've put up 17, 9, 9, and 7. So the past few games hitting right below that value, and last week we saw the Bombers not really get anything done offensively against Montreal. The Alouettes put up 11 points on them. Calgary's got a good defense. As I mentioned, this should be a tight playoff matchup. So I think there is play to be had there. I would be cautious though, because if the Bombers do start all of their starters and play a full game here, they don't give up very many fantasy points to defenses. So I would be cautious in that category. I'm saying stay away from the Ticats defense, 35.86 salary. You want 9 points out of them. And I'm saying away from them just based on their recent performances. They hit 16 points against Ottawa in Week 12. But other than that, 4 of their last 5 games, their highest total has been 6 points. They're also facing a Riders team that's given up, hasn't given up a ton of fantasy points this year as well. Hamilton does have a lot to play for in this game, but I've personally been burned by too many weeks in a row where they haven't really given you the value you wanted out of the defense. So I think this is the week I'm saying stay away there. Also saying the same thing about Ottawa's defense, $3,200. Montreal is their matchup this week. Montreal has a lot to play for in the playoffs. They also have one of the better offensive lines in the league. And Ottawa, in the past 3 games, 1 point, 2 point, and 10 points. So they've been hit and miss, kind of like Toronto in their past little while. I don't love the option there, because who knows who's playing for Ottawa in their final game of the season. For the Elks, this is an interesting one because they play 2 games this week, and so you've seen a common theme, of me recommending Elks at a lot of different positions so far this season, or this week in the previews. But Edmonton, defensively, I don't think the play is there, even with 2 games. They are averaging 3.4 points a game. You need 8 points out of them. That 2 games like that, of their average, still isn't even hitting you value there, and they're going to be exhausted by that second game. So I don't love the option of the Elks. I also say stay away, red light finally on the BC Lions. Yes, they do have Edmonton coming into their 3rd game in 6 days, so there could be play to be had there. But BC's defense in their past 5-6 games, they've had 1 game where they put up 9 points, and other than that, their highest total was 3. So they've been quite the letdown in the second half of the season here, and I don't think are worth putting in your fantasy lineup for the final week of the season. So those are your options on defense for the week. I really think Montreal is the best one, but there are some potential plays in Winnipeg and Calgary. That is it for the positional previews for the week. As I mentioned, I'll have a depth chart update out Tuesday morning for that game. I'll have depth chart updates out later in the week as well for all the other games. Make sure you check those, and make sure you get your lineup locked in before Tuesday night's game. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't. If you have any fantasy questions, put them in the comments section or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. Link to that's in the description. And if you want to play CFL Fantasy alongside myself and other viewers, there's a link in the description as well there to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix group over on the official CFL Fantasy site. Play alongside myself and other viewers this week and throughout the 2021 playoffs of CFL Fantasy. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.